Today's intention is everybody that you come in contact with, think about how you can give them a level 10 experience. I will be looking for ways to give you, the listener, a level 10 experience.
Hey, it's Bobby. Welcome to Student of Intention, where we help you enjoy the pursuit of purpose. And remember, don't wait, start small, learn as you go. Hello, friends. Welcome to Student of Intention, this little corner of the podcasting world where we spark, strengthen, and support self-discovery. It's just a wonderful afternoon here in the Creative Palace. I'm real stoked about my guest, Simon Parsons, that's going to join me here shortly. But first, as is tradition, I want to share a little story. One I wasn't planning on sharing, but I think is worth telling you. So this is my first Student of Intention podcast without tea in my hand. And it's because I'm in day 3 of a water only fast. And I don't bring it up just because of the fast, but I bring it, I guess, just to give you some context about the fast. My co-captain, Chris Decker, had been telling me his experiences with fasts, and my good friend Ryan Kearney, former podcast guest, was telling me about his experiences. And I just said, I just kind of want to see what this thing's about. And so I dove right in, sort of curious and eyes wide. And on Monday, I started with just 2 light organic superfood shakes, were my only sort of nutrition for the day. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, and now today, only water. And yesterday was grueling. For whatever reason, Monday, Tuesday, just fine. But yesterday was grueling. I found myself just sort of cranky, sort of sad, sort of confused, sort of, whiny, just not feeling real good. And got to the point where I was like, what the heck am I doing? Like, this is stupid. I eat really healthy. I work out all the time. Like, I've got a triathlon coming up in a few months. Like, there's no reason for me to be restricting nutrition from myself. But I made it through the day, went into sleep, and woke up today feeling a little bit better, but also like was about to give myself an out at 7 this morning. I was like, this is silly. Go make yourself a shake. And I was going to make myself a healthy shake and indulge and just sort of like satisfy this pain, this hunger, and this frustration that I was kind of feeling. And then I journaled. And after journaling, I was like, kind of had this beautiful thought, of, what the heck am I doing? Like, if I were to stop this now, I would have to wait another 2 or 3 grueling days to get to this exact moment. And although it's tough, like, I know it's going to be over. I know that the fast is going to be done tomorrow. And this is my one chance to sort of like sit with this pain, with this challenge, and just embrace it and kind of understand what it is. And so that's what I've done, and, reporting that I feel much better. But the point is just, we all face challenging moments. We all have like tough times. Certainly day 3 of a fast, I think, qualifies as one. And it's helpful to just sort of sit with that struggle, sit with that challenge, and kind of milk it for what it's worth. See what you can learn, see what it's about, knowing that eventually this thing's going to pass. Things will change, and you will be on the other side of the struggle, much like I will be on the other side of this fast. And with that, I'll shift to a man who I'm sure has had his fair share of struggles, but has also had his fair share of leaning into those struggles, learning about them, and coming out the other side a little bit stronger, a little bit more enthusiastic. His name is Simon Parsons, and let's clarify, he is not a life coach. He's a badass activation coach. He teaches business owners the latest in neuroscience, behavioral psychology, physiology, and growth mindset to leverage performance in business and sales. Simon, who's a badass activation coach. Welcome.
What is up, my friend? It is so good to be here. I love what you said about your fast. That is some mindset training right there. And I love how you leveraged what you wanted to get out of that as opposed to what you were missing out on, my friend.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it wasn't easy, but I'm really grateful that I sort of came to that realization. And yeah, like it seems like that resonates with you. I assume you've been in similar circumstances. When was the last like challenge that you had? And did you, I guess, how did you have that mindset of like, I can sit with this, I can learn from this?
Oh, I'm doing one right now. For me, I've got a really bad sweet tooth. Sugar's always been my bane. And I just on a moment's notice with another girl in my mastermind, we just decided we're going to Mexico for the in-person mastermind in September. And about 3 weeks ago, we started talking about it. And this girl, she's a high performer and she expects a lot. And she was saying to me, I need to find someone who's crazy like me and cut out sugar and cut out alcohol and have a healthy diet, for the next couple of months, and who will shave their head if they don't do it. And I was just thinking, oh my God, I need to actually cut out sugar. And I could feel myself thinking, I don't want to tell her that because I don't want her to hold me accountable. But whenever I have that thought, I have a tripwire in me that just makes me do it. I've just wired my brain to, when I feel those limiting beliefs come in, when I feel resistance, I call it the tripwire. And when I hear something like that in my head, I just go. So I'm like, all right, I'll do it with you. And so we've been keeping each other accountable, but there's time. What I love about what you said about
clarify, you said that you agreed to not eat sugar. And did you say you're going to have to shave your head if you do?
Yeah. And that's not going to happen. I've got a nice mane here. I'm
no, it looks good. Don't get rid of that, man.
I'm not cutting it off. So to me, that's not even a possibility, though. I don't even feel like I need to have that type of accountability. She just brought that up, and she's got beautiful hair, but that's how crazy she is. And a lot of people say you never want to be the smartest person in the room. Well, I never want to be the craziest person in the room. So I surround myself with just badasses. And when she said that, I was just like, okay, she's serious. So I'm on board. I'll do it with you because I'm crazy too. I want to be around that. I want to be with people who just play on the highest level. And it's interesting because I had cut out. I've done this before, but I tried it earlier this year and I failed. I caved in. And what had happened, and this is why I mentioned how I love that you're leveraging your mindset on your fast, is I wasn't doing that properly. And the times I've succeeded, I use proper leverage. I use, the fear of caving in or the pain of having to start over. And what I had done a couple times this year is I had used the excuse of, well, I've done this before, so I don't need to do it again. And I was focused on the wrong thing. So just like how you said that you're focusing on, I'd have to start all over again. It'd take me 2 days to get. I love that type of leverage because it's so powerful. And this time there's no question I will not fail because I'm focused on the right things. I'm focused on leveraging the right ideas and thoughts in my head instead of the wrong ones, which are usually excuses. And I love the fasting part of it too. I haven't done a 3-day fast. I've done a 24-hour fast before. I do intermittent fasting because it gives me a lot of focus in the morning. But 3 days, that's incredible. But the whole reason why I mentioned that is I just love the way that you're using that to get through this. It's incredibly powerful, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it sort of just came to me. It wasn't planned, and I wish I wasn't in such a need, but I think the realization was really strong in the sense that like, this is what I chose to do. Like I wanted to do this. I wanted to experience this fast, for all that it's worth. And I guess maybe my expectations were that like, it just wouldn't be that bad. I don't know why, but so then I face into the, I have this challenge. I'm feeling a little down. I'm feeling a little weird. And, what I latched onto is like, hey, you signed up for this experience. This is who you want. But we do that a lot, right? We do that a lot where we go down a path intentionally. We want to do something. And when it doesn't go our way,
we forget why we decided to go down that path in the first place.
Right. Or it's not how we wanted it to be, right? Like our expectations are sort of missed.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because you can step out of it and just be the observer. And that's where it gets powerful, is it, when you're not being there, being like, I'm the one who's really hungry. I'm the one who's, going to fall off the wagon. When you step out of yourself and just observe yourself with those feelings and not tethering onto them. Kind of like feedback, right? Like when someone gives you feedback or when you're soliciting feedback, it's easy to make that so personal. And same with when you have those cravings or those temptations or those excuses that come in. Where we really cave into them is when we identify with those, when that becomes us, when it's really just a feeling. That's not you. That's a feeling that it's a thought that you're having, right? But you can easily have the thoughts, and that's what you did. Was the other thing I love is that you just did. Sounds like you did that on a moment's notice. I love that.
In terms of starting it?
Well, it sounds like you're just like, oh, this sounds interesting, and I'm going to do it.
Yes.
I love that.
It's pretty haphazard.
Yeah, that is badass activation right there.
Oh, thanks, man. I need it because I'm still hungry. I'm not gonna lie.
I bet.
But yeah, this happens with our creative work as well, right? Like, and I want to ask you a little bit about your new YouTube channel. It's called Mindset Hackers, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And our creative work's the same thing. Like you are going down this path of creating this YouTube channel, which I think we all think is probably easier than it is, but actually starting it and then putting all the effort, like I saw some of your videos, the amount of energy in just the promo video, as well as like thinking about the content that you're going to speak about for, I don't know, 12 to 16 minute stints, something like that. How has that process gone? What sort of surprised you, and what's the intention behind it?
Well, what surprised me is that I'm even doing it. I've got so much on my plate. I've always got new projects, and it was interesting because I have a friend that I've been pushing. He is a producer for a family that they make, a couple $1 million off of YouTube. He produces their stuff. And he used to be from Hollywood, but he moved into this space. And I've been bugging him to start to coach other people on how to do YouTube, because I think that that's a really good topic to have. And I think he can make a lot of money doing that. And I told him what I had done with LinkedIn, because I had some success on LinkedIn. And then I get really passionate about leaning into imposter syndrome. And last year I was having a lot of success with LinkedIn pretty quickly. I had only been on the platform actively for about 3 months, and I was starting to build a good following and get a voice and get engagement on my stuff. And I started sharing that with other people and helping other coaches and teaching them how to do that. And then I was like wondering, well, maybe I could monetize this. But this is that tripwire. Is my head was like, why would anybody pay you to learn how to do LinkedIn when you've only been there for 3 months? And so the second that I thought that, okay, well, this is a perfect time to test it out. And so I did it, and it turned into a successful course. And I was bugging my friend about it, telling him, you've got to do this. And I was telling him the steps on how to do that. So he actually did roll out a YouTube. He's doing it right now. It's still in progress. And that's how fast this stuff moves, and why I love action takers is because the first week that he did this, I just showed up to support him more than anything. I didn't really plan on doing a YouTube channel. I started to see the bigger picture though, and it was funny because within a week I had a mindset, had that channel booted up, and then you have to have at least 100 followers to claim the URL. So I used LinkedIn to make a push to boot it up, and now it's starting to get some traction. And it hasn't even been up for a month, but it's, and the ideas are starting to formulate and percolate inside of my mind. But the gist of it is sharing information with people, Q&A on topics where people get roadblocks. Like you and I were talking about sales and how salespeople have fears. And if I can break that down into a 15-minute video and say, this is why you're having that fear, this is how you overcome it. So it's going to be highly specific and get to the point. But basically, I want to help people with a mindset toolbox, because that's what I think I have. I think that I have a vast toolbox when it comes to the way you look at things, the way you adapt to things, the way you interpret things, the meaning that you give, the intentions that you set. So when good or bad things, well, I don't even like using good or bad because it's very judgmental, but when circumstances or people come into my life that I'm not expecting, I feel like I can open up this toolbox of tools and utilize the one that works best. And then I was thinking about that movie, The Matrix, how they're hackers, right? And you get into this is a movie, if your listeners don't know, 20 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, about this virtual reality where you could you'd have exceptional skills, running on walls, like jumping through walls, having all these superpowers and learning things when you could just get these programs uploaded and know how to do jujitsu, know how to do kung fu just by having it uploaded. So it kind of gave me the idea of creating like the Mindset Hackers channel on YouTube where I could build something similar where the short videos,
just download it real quick.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's been fun, but if you know me, I'm just like you. I just jump into things. And I'm feeling really good about this. And the biggest point is just like what you're doing is to help other people and serve them on the highest level. Give them tools that they can use.
100%. 100%. And yes, I do jump into things quite a bit. And I'm really, really good at follow through. At the same time, like what I notice with some of the other is I think when you do a lot, like you just mentioned, like you can't believe you're doing a YouTube channel because you're really active on LinkedIn. You're really active in coaching. You're in sales as well. Like you've got plenty of stuff on your plate. As do I. When I notice that, like it does get a little like, just tough to manage and tough to like understand, like, okay, is it worth it? Basically, right, is one question. So I'm just curious if you're getting any digital reads on that from the YouTube perspective, and like, because it's got to naturally take a little bit of time from your LinkedIn stuff and your coaching stuff. Like, how is there any feelings of sort of like it's taking away from those other projects, or is it just like, man, this is just another bolt on and I'm all systems go?
I view time a little bit differently than most people. I think time is very malleable. What I love about that 1 minute that you just said, you didn't use busy in there at all.
No,
you didn't say busy. You said managing a lot of different things. And it's interesting because I'm really on this kick of how we perceive time. And my day is not only am I doing the things that you listed, but I've got a new baby. I've got 2 other kids. My wife's having surgery, so I have to help out with the kids a lot because she can't even lift up my baby. I have a mastermind that I'm part of, which requires a lot of time. I'm doing some coaching within that group as well. I'm always learning new things. I'm working out. I meditate. I have a comprehensive morning routine. I've got the sales role, the coaching, creating content. Well, this takes up a lot of time too, is engaging with your audience. So it's interesting to see how much I've been doing, but I think part of it is because I'm not saying, well, I have 8 hours to work with and I need to fill it up. And then my subconscious is just doing stuff to fill up that time. The name of your podcast is all about intention. So where I come from is my intent is to serve people on the highest level through the most efficient means. And that takes time. It does take time to boot up a channel. LinkedIn, I've hit that hard for a year now, and it's almost perpetual now. I don't have to service it as much. And so now I have more time to dedicate to YouTube. But I think LinkedIn, you have the problem of decaying content. So before I joined this YouTube course that my friend's putting together, I was thinking about, I don't have time I don't even like using that. I don't want to make time for these videos because it seems like it could be an extensive amount of work. But if you think about it with LinkedIn, you're creating content that disappears in 6 to 12 hours.
That's right.
Maybe it hangs on, but it disappears. And YouTube actually goes the other way. It's a search engine. And so a lot of the content that you put up can be around for years and actually grow as time goes on. So that's actually what really got me interested in YouTube. I didn't have that realization prior to a few weeks ago. And so that's exciting for me because I can kind of hit it on both angles. But yeah, I think time is so malleable and how we feel about it. If we feel like we're busy, it doesn't really matter if we're spending 3 hours watching Netflix at night and not doing a whole lot of other stuff. If we feel like we're busy, we're busy. If we are doing a lot of stuff and having fun I'm having so much fun, Bobby. When I wake up in the morning, I have to pinch myself. I can't get enough sleep because I'm so excited waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. My mind starts turning about the day and all the opportunity ahead. So really, that's where I'm geeking out lately, is just the perception of time and the perception of money. I mean, it's very similar.
Well, let's stick on the time one for right now, because that's really fascinating to me for a couple of reasons. One, when I started practicing living with intention, which was sort of born out of this book that I wrote called The 5 Buckets. And it's this practice of setting intentions each week across 5 areas of life. And I write about it in the book. I wrote about it in a couple of blogs. Like, this unintended consequence was I had more time, or at least I felt like I had more time. Like, I felt a lot less rushed. I felt a lot more, just a better pace and more transitional, like, time going through, the happenings of my world and the happenings of my life. And it was funny. I always got like the question from people I talked about, like, well, where did that come from? And I don't think I really ever got the answer. My sort of idea around it was, it comes from doing the things that I want to do. That if you're prioritizing things in health, prioritizing things in learning and in relationships, these are things that by default I think we tend to not prioritize, right? Like, we prioritize our work life, I think, just naturally over most things. So then when you squeeze in these things that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise, like reading a chapter of a book or cooking a meal for your wife or taking a run on the beach, right? Like, those are usually the things that get pushed to the side quickly and easily. And so those are the things that give you that sense of like, oh, I don't have time because I'm not doing the things that I want to do.
Absolutely.
That's my idea. But now the second part of this thing is like, if I'm being honest, man, lately I feel like I feel like the time, the sensation of time being malleable and like being abundant has sort of lost its luster a little bit. It slipped from me a little bit. I'm feeling a little busy these days. So I'm just curious what you're kind of cheesing on with regards to time and like how you see that vision playing out. Cause you're clearly you're clearly,
I'm productive. I'm
clearly full.
Well, yeah. I try to avoid using that word. I don't like using that word because you can manifest, just even talking about it gets you to, it starts to get you to think like that and then feel like it. But essentially the feeling of busy is cortisol in your body. It's a type of anxiety. It's a type of low-level stress. And our society kind of embraces that, the hustle and grind culture. You got to be busy. You got to be hustling. You got to be grinding. Well, yeah, if you want, count me out of that. But I guarantee I'm doing more. I'm more productive than most people. It's just, why do I need to feel busy? I could be doing more things and being more productive than someone who feels really busy without that feeling. Think about this. When you have something that's really urgent, like in sales, a deal that needs to be closed, and something's starting to fall apart, and people, they're all frazzled about it. They're all frantic and they've got so much anxiety. And do you really need that? Is that required to get what needs to be done? So that's a feeling too.
It's not helpful.
Yeah, it's not helpful. And if you're frazzled, and you go to someone else and project that energy, they're going to be frazzled too. And it's more likely to blow up the situation than if you're calm, right? So that's just another version of that cortisol in your body, that anxiety. So I believe you can still be urgent or still be productive and still do a lot of things without that feeling. It's just training your mindset to not. I think we just subconsciously attach those feelings. So when a lot of things are going on, but I think that's part of productivity, of high productivity, is not getting into that frantic mode where you aren't thinking as clearly, where your energy is getting more diffused instead of focused. So for me, I've just realized that it all started with this, Bobby, is a person that's a friend of mine. We were talking one time, and I was explaining how my schedule, which didn't have as many things on it as I do now. And we were talking about it, and he was like, I don't know how you have time to do all that. And he listed out the things that he had to do, which was far less than my list. And I realized that it's because you feel busy. So therefore your subconscious is creating things for you to do. And you kind of touched on this too. You were talking about setting aside the stuff that's most important to you. Well, if you're really intentional about that, again, going back to the name of your podcast. So what's important to me is my morning routine and my sleep and my time with my children. I can get everything else accomplished. What needs to get done will get done. I really believe that we think we need to do certain things that we don't need to do. And what I mean by that is, I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day, and someone had asked this question, which really aligns with how I believe and how I think. But they were like, who came up with the 40-hour work week? Why does that fit? Why does everybody have to have a 40-hour work week? That's kind of the standard for thousands of professions and thousands of jobs. Why do you need to do how could it be possible that every job gets done in 40 hours? Yeah. The reason is someone said it, and then so that became the standard, and now people work 40 hours, but they don't need to work 40 hours. They fill up 40 hours. So I think that being really intentional about what you need to get done and what's the most important and what is most impactful for you should be at the forefront. And then whatever needs to get done will get done. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's so simply stated. And at the same time, like, it's an epidemic, man. Like the busyness there's clients I work with that I can't tell you how many times I'm like, hey, we should schedule training, or we should get together and, talk strategy for what we want to accomplish for the next quarter. And it's just like the same default answer from seemingly like 80-90% of executives that I work with and salespeople that I interact with are like, I have no bandwidth. I just can't. And I'm just like, really? You're not Barack Obama here. Like, you've got to figure out what's that constraint. Like, cause it's such a bummer. Like it's just such a bummer to have that mindset of like literally like I'm shackled to my schedule. I can't do anything, but I see it a lot. I see it in a lot of people.
Well, and that's what's interesting too, is a lot of those, that's kind of considered success by some people. I think it's more like bondage.
Oh,
and while I'm highly productive and my schedule has a lot of things on it, I'm having so much fun and I'm enjoying my life. If I wasn't enjoying it, then I would probably be saying I'm busy. But I voluntarily take on so much because I'm so passionate, and I do not want to waste a second on this planet. When I wake up in the morning, my why is there's air in my freaking lungs. I'm going to go use that. I'm going to use this life to do as much as I can. And that alignment just gives me so much energy. I wake up early with no alarm and I fall asleep like a baby at night because I'm so passionate about what I do. And that's a good place to be in. And I also think that we need to question things more. I feel like my schedule is a result of me being like, why not? Why can't I get more done? And just pushing the boundaries to see what's possible. And I just think there's multiple things that go into the time equation. It's a big part of it is the feeling. A big part of it is putting the stuff that is most important first and then letting everything else fall in. Those are two big realizations about time. I think the feeling, though, if people could wrap their heads around that, because it's the same with money. You can have people who have large amounts of money, millionaires and billionaires, feeling like they never have enough or feeling like it's going to be taken away. Well, they aren't wealthy because wealth is a feeling. It's not a number. I think time, you can look at time the same way, is that time is a feeling, because you can have all the time in the world, but if you feel rushed, what does it matter how much time you have? I geek out on this stuff, and it changes my reality. The way I perceive the world is different because I'm so tuned into the feelings, and also being able to change those feelings, to navigate them, to know where I am at, understand where that came from, and be able to mold that. What it does is my world is freaking incredible. The world that I'm experiencing is a direct result of what's going on inside of me.
Man, we can stop the podcast right there. Beautifully said. I mean, not only just the why of like having air in your lungs, but in particular, this concept that I've toyed around with, like, I feel like I'm just like scratching the surface of just how much like our interior affects the perception of how we experience the world, right? Of how we think about the world around us, how we think about time, how we think about money. I think you just really nailed it. And that's really cool that you just developed that. I assume you haven't always been like that.
No, I got into personal development, but I missed a lot of this stuff. I got into visualization when I was younger. I listened to Tony Robbins, read some self-development books, and then got away from that when I got into DJing and just kind of spent a decade, screwing around, but then got back into sales. And as you and I discussed before we started the podcast, that put the turbocharge on my sales business. I think that the earlier work in personal development from decades ago served me well, and I had always done well in sales, but where it really magnified is when I went all in on mindset. And I shifted from visualization as being seeing a movie in my mind of what I wanted to feeling it. And I started to realize all this profound stuff around the feeling, and as I started studying neuroscience and neurochemistry and realizing that every time you feel something, that's an actual physical and chemical response in your body. And then you start understanding the way that your brain wires to be closer to how neurons start firing closer together, creating patterns that make it easier to wire you for success or wire you for failure. And then those trigger a neurochemical response in your body, and then your cells get used to receiving, whether it's a good chemical, again, I hate to use good and bad, but a chemical that serves you or a chemical that hinders you. So serotonin and dopamine can be they can accelerate success and accelerate mindfulness and being present, whereas cortisol and adrenaline can be the feelings of stress, acute stress or chronic stress, anxiety. So if you marinate your cells in those chemicals for long enough, wouldn't they start getting used to it and start craving it? So I believe that negative or positive mindsets, growth mindset, fixed mindset, when you stay in those states for long enough, the world unfolds that way, because not just because you're of the feeling, but that the way your brain is wired to think, which creates a chemical response in your body that you actually get addicted to. And then you take actions without you even realizing it to keep you in those states. You see people who are addicted to drama, and they just seem to have a lot of situations that come about. Well, I don't believe that's just a circumstance. I believe that even without them realizing it, their subconscious is finding and being aware of highly volatile situations to bring them closer to, so that their body will get that fix. Is that crazy or what? I mean, that's deep, but once you understand that, why can't you wire yourself for success?
It's deep, and at the same time, like, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that would maybe just sort of scoff at that point in some ways, or like bring up excuses or bring up other things. But like anything that you've just said or that we've discussed, like the more and more I like break it down, it actually just sounds totally logical. Well,
that's what I try to do, especially with the Mindset Hackers channel. And my content is to the woo-woo stuff that has, I mean, people who are into the practices that we are, so we know that it's tangible and a lot of it works. There's some stuff that we might be a little bit skeptical about, But for the longest time, and we haven't been able to explain it, but the science has started to catch up to it. And the law of attraction is not necessary. I guess you could look at it as this energetic field, but I think that from a neuroscience perspective, you start thinking a certain way, and then those neurons wire and fire together closer. So that becomes what's a pattern in your mind, kind of like when you ski down a slope and you start carving into the snow, it becomes easier to go down those paths. You do the same thing with your mind. So when you think a certain way for long enough, you start wiring yourself to like I talked about the trigger in my mind that gets me to go when I hear the voice. That's a pattern. And all that is two neurons firing closer together. That pathway is starting to carve in. And then that creates an excited feeling in me. That's the dopamine rush. And then my body feels that rush. Every time I'm about to hop on a podcast, I don't get nervous. I get excited because I can feel that coming into my body and I'm so ready to go. And it's just so interesting, that chain. But when I addict my body and my brain to thinking that way, I am certain, because of the perceived ease of things that come into my life, that the ease is not because it's just circumstance. It's because without me realizing it, my subconscious is serving my body and that neurochemical addiction of success. So it's putting me in situations without me even realizing it. So many things come into my life that I'm just like, I can't even believe this. The science explanation of that is my body's trying to get a fix. The fix of that adrenaline rush of me sitting here with you and having so much fun on this podcast and serving your following on the highest level and trying to deliver them a level 10 experience.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah. I mean, it sounds logical. Like, it's like, if you train your mind to think this way, then it's going to sort of, shape your, subconscious, actions. And of course your conscious actions are going to be shaped towards experiencing these feelings more often. And then it plays both ways, right? If you're, a person that finds themselves in a lot of drama and sort of, keeps going along that, indulges in that drama, what have you, right? Like you're training your brain to look for more reinforcement of that feeling.
Yeah. It's interesting because, people, well, when you have a substance in your body, a drug like ecstasy, for example, that drops, or MDMA that drops serotonin in your body. Serotonin's it's a natural substance. It's the feeling of gratitude. It's the feeling of love. And you can do that with a substance, but you can also do that with a thought. And that's what's incredible, Bobby, is I am literally high on life. When I meditate, I can feel serotonin drop into my body. That feeling of gratitude, that feeling of being present, that feeling of being mindful, all that is serotonin that's dropping into your body. And that's what's so cool, is you can be naturally high. You can be naturally motivated. You just have to know how to tap into the thoughts that create those substances, right? There's people who do cocaine, that what that's doing is it's dropping a lot of dopamine into your system, but there's other ways to drop dopamine into your system. And that's by being excited for something and the unpredictability of success. In sales, that's why salespeople can get so addicted to it, is because there's the possibility well, same with gambling, right? Mm. There's a predictability factor that releases dopamine in your mind. And you can do all this stuff naturally, and you can do it in a way that serves you. It can also harm you. You don't need to do drugs to drop dopamine, but if you don't have the serotonin component, I call it the dopamine treadmill. And this is the CEOs or high performers, they get addicted to always chasing. They're always looking for the promotion or the certain amount in their bank account. The millionaires, the billionaires that we talked about that are never happy, the reason why is because they've found a way to cultivate the dopamine part, which drives them, but they forgot about the serotonin part, which is the mindfulness and the gratitude. So they're busy because they're missing out on life, because they're always thinking about the future and how they're going to get to that next level rather than celebrating where they're at. And so if you can get the dopamine and serotonin balanced out, you live a life that is incredibly rewarding, incredibly exciting, keeps you driving forward, but also keeps you full of gratitude and full of joy and full of happiness and living in the present instead of always living in the future. And then you do that enough, and then you start training your mind to think that way. And then you start training the thoughts to release those chemicals in your body on your own. And then your body gets addicted to them, and your subconscious works in your favor. It's so profound. It's so powerful, but it's a lot to wrap your head around.
Indeed, indeed. Well, let's wrap around the thought a little bit about within your story. I assume you weren't always like this. You weren't, because by the way, you also were very clear, and I agree with you 100%. Like, this takes practice, right? Like, this takes commitment. Like, you have your morning routine, you meditate quite a bit, right? Like, you feel, you sort of, surround yourself with positive people, positive content. You manufacture this in a lot of ways for at least for your internal feeling, and then by default, your external feeling. I find myself doing this more and more and embracing these practices more than I ever have. And I've always considered myself a pretty optimistic, a pretty successful guy. But really, it was like this retreat last September that sort of just, created a little bit of a rocket ship of like, okay, I'm going to go all in on setting intentions, reflecting on my experience, reading everything I possibly can about, about personal growth, about resistance, about, all the stuff that we're talking about. And it's been quite a journey to get myself here. A lot of people would talk to you and say like, Bobby's a totally different guy. I don't even know this guy. I assume, Simon, you had your own little moment of like, I don't know, transformation where, again, I don't think you popped out of the womb, meditating, doing all these practices. Can you go back in time and share us a little bit about like, A, what prompted that change, and then B, what those early steps looked like?
Yes, this is a good story. So I used to teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when it was really early on in the U.S. This is pre Ultimate Fighting Championship #1 with Royce Gracie. So one of Royce Gracie's best friends, Pedro Sauer, who is now a world famous Jiu-Jitsu instructor, he set up shop here in Salt Lake City, and I started training with him, and I became one of his instructors, teaching basically basic jiu-jitsu. I taught the beginner class, and there was this one gentleman he was very heavy set, really struggled with understanding the concepts. And it's just funny because just like how I can explain neuroscience, I can do that with jiu-jitsu and teach people, use analogies really well and paint a picture. And I spent extra time. He had a hard time grasping jiu-jitsu, and so I'd spend some time after class giving him private lessons, not officially, but just taking him aside, teaching him stuff, and spending some more time with him. And he started to pick it up. And one day he just said, "I'm so grateful for you helping me out." And I was like probably 19 or 20 years old, so really young. This is early 90s, and he's like, "I'd like to help you out." And I was like, "Oh, what do you do?" And turns out he was a millionaire tycoon, real estate tycoon. And he started giving me all this stuff. He gave me a bunch of stuff about real estate, these audio cassettes from guys who had done well in real estate. And then he gave me this book called Psycho-Cybernetics, which is a classic, a personal development classic. But that was my very first book on personal development. I loved it. It was talking about visualization in there. And it was just mind blowing to me because I never heard anything about it, but I started doing that, and it really helped me out. I would visualize jiu-jitsu. At work, I'd always be thinking about moves, about chokeholds or arm locks. And it was interesting because I'd train 2 days a week, but it was like I was training 6 days a week. So I'm in the matrix, right? I'm being uploaded with these programs. I'm actually training without my body actually doing that. And I think that was what was really profound. I think I had some feelings of not making my parents proud and maybe some unworthiness with the girl I was dating. And I always thought of myself as being fairly confident, but I think I needed external validation for a while. And so I started buying things and, getting into the materialism of, needing to look a certain way. And became a DJ because I think I craved that validation. I wanted to be the cool DJ. And so that got me off track, and it got me off track financially. And I mean, everything worked out great, and I learned so much from that. And craving that external validation actually shaped me into someone who desires to perform well. But it's funny because it came full circle. I mean, I got totally derailed.
And you said derailed by the DJ experience?
Yeah, I mean, when you're DJing, you're hanging out, partying, and you're chasing, right? You're chasing this, and you're doing it because you want the validation. I mean, I certainly love the music, but for me, it was like I had a hole that I needed to fill because at some level I didn't feel worthy, and I didn't know this at the time, but I was chasing the rock star lifestyle to fill that. It was the ego, right? Mm-hmm. And ultimately it served me, and everything came back around. I left that. I got married. I took a boy in who was neglected and abused, and we eventually adopted him. But all that brought me back. It brought me back into serving and not thinking about myself. And then also the confidence grew into where I don't need that anymore. And we took a boy in, and I spent 5 years in a legal battle to keep him. And then after that was cleared up, it was like I needed something to fill that hole. So I volunteered at a place where I could help children who had lost a loved one. It was a grief support network. And then it became mindset. How do I help people level up their mindset? So, and the funny thing too is I kept hearing I'd read books on finances, and one common thing I kept hearing is you've got to pay it forward. You've got to help people out. If you're very wealthy, you've got to use some of that money and take care of people. And I was like, I keep seeing this in so many books. And I've always like skinned off a little bit as far as donating. And I'm just like, I'm going to lean into this a little bit and started giving more. And then law of attraction shit started happening. I'd get checks in the mail. I'd be making fun of that stuff in The Secret or whatever about checks in the mail. And then I would start donating money a little bit on a bigger level. And then I'd get a check in the mail for something like a loan that I took part in from two decades ago that became a class action lawsuit. And all of a sudden they're sending me checks for $1,000. Stuff like that would start happening. I'm like, wow, what if I gave a little bit more? So now I give all the time, and I'm not saying this to brag or anything. I'm just saying that it's such a facilitator of abundance because I've started to realize that I'm such an abundant source. The more I can help, the more I can serve. It just comes back because the universe decides that you're a good steward of knowledge or money or helping people. And so I've just let that go. And it's so fun for me because I don't even care. I don't think about money anymore. I give when I can. If it feels uncomfortable, I do it anyways. And I'm fine. Mm-hmm. I think it's because when you stop grabbing on so tight, your hands are open to receive more. And the universe or the energy level behind that is just, I mean, I guess if you had to go analytical or scientific, I think it's because you're not clutching on and you're seeing opportunity instead of playing a smaller game. But to me, the way I describe it is just the universe trusts you, and you become a good steward of knowledge or helping. And we're all connected, right? If we help each other out, if we let go of what's holding us back, then it just comes back even more. It allows us to play even bigger.
100%, man. 100%. Well said. And do you find that you explain things scientifically or analytically often? Because I thought you said it beautifully just as it was. But do you feel that like it lands a little bit better when people hear the science behind it?
I think that's kind of what a part of my personal branding a little bit is being able to give some science behind it. What's crazy is I think I'm wired to think more analytically, but I've always been open. I'm one of those people that looks for explanations, but at the same time, if it's not going to hurt me or somebody else, I'm open to try it. So I've always been open to whatever, if it sounds a little bit woo-woo. And then I see that it works. And so that's made me just to the point where I don't question things. I trust it. I feel like there's stuff that cannot be explained by science at this point. In a nutshell, for me, kind of part of my branding is to be able to lend some science behind the concepts of mindfulness, intention, gratitude, abundance to the people who might not be to that point. There's plenty of people where I can say, yeah, the universe is just blessing me with abundance and the law of, I'm tuned into the frequency, and that resonates with a lot of people. But I also think there's people who aren't there yet. You and I kind of talked about sales before this, and you're like, yeah, I'm not sure if intention really resonates with the people that are hardcore in sales. It's surprising because I used to do a lot of coaching in my sales organization, and I felt the same way, but the more woo I got, the more people would show up. So I think it's a little bit of both, but sometimes you have people who probably scoff at it a little bit. And I don't even care anymore. I remember I used to be afraid to speak my mind about anything that had to do with self-love or meditation, because there's something in my brain that feared some jock in high school thinking I'm a dork. And it's so funny how little I care about that and how much I lean into it now. So I'm down with going woo.
Yeah, 100%. No, and yeah, I think it's interesting and it's definitely helpful. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that's something I want to lean into. I want to figure out how to bring into the sales world. It just happened literally just the other day. I was talking to one of my peers / mentors, and I was talking to him about, hey, like, I see an opportunity. You have a good sized team. They're a little beaten down from not hitting their sales numbers. And I was like, dude, book's coming out. Like, I want to go, run through, 2 to 3 weeks of, setting intentions through some of the stuff I wrote about in the book. And, as I mentioned earlier, the book's called The 5 Buckets, and it's about 5 areas of life, and work's only one of them. It's actually the last one. And he's like, well, wait, are you going to like do all the buckets? And I'm like, well, yeah, bro, like that's the point. You take care of your relationships, you take care of your creativity, you lean into learning, you lean into, your health, and, you're a more complete person. You've discovered your authentic self, through those practices. And then by default, you should be able to offer more valuable contributions.
Well, it's so interesting because the intention is, to me, is so important for sales, because it's like, okay, what am I going to do today? Well, I'm going to go to the meeting and then I'm going to hammer out my 50 calls for the day. What? No, I am going to sell, and I'm going to serve somebody. I'm going to find somebody that has a problem that I can solve and provide a solution for them. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go like make 50 calls. I'm going to help somebody. That's my intention. I see so many salespeople without any direction, and their results suffer. There's so many applications in sales when it comes to growth mindset, psychology, and setting intention.
Well, and from a training perspective, like you'll see this on LinkedIn. I don't know if you follow any sales, content producers, what have you. Like, the sales training that's out there is like top 10 email subject lines, like top 5 qualifying questions, like what to say when you get an objection. Like, it's all very, it's helpful tactics. But, I think to the point that you illustrated, right? Like, most of the salespeople that I see are going in with that mindset of like, I'm just going to get done my 50 calls and just sort of move on. So it's like, to give that person like, an elevated script that, is tested to, get people to talk more or whatever. Like, it's sort of providing a tiny solution to a much bigger problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because even gratitude has applications scientifically and in sales. When you're grateful for something, you're training the part of your brain, the reticular activating system, to notice certain things, right? So a gratitude of practice may seem so irrelevant.
That's right.
But really, when you're grateful, you're saying, I appreciate that, and I would like to be more in the path of that situation or that feeling or that person. So what that does is it trains your mind to look out for it. So in sales, if I don't, people get hung up on the market all the time. Really, if you develop yourself, it doesn't matter what the market is. If you're one of the top reps who can connect with people and you can find solutions and know where to find them, it doesn't matter if there's 50,000 fish in the sea or 50 million, because you know where to go there's plenty of fish to feed you. Mm-hmm. And what inexperienced reps or reps that have a negative mindset is they're focusing on the number of fish in the sea and not how can I develop myself into a better hunter of those fish.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I mean, dude, this has been an awesome conversation. The thing that I usually end on is asking about and I think you talked about this a little bit, is about this sort of manufacturing your reality, manufacturing your surroundings by taking care of your interior. How I talk about that, with regards to living with intention, it's alignment. And alignment alignment can show up in a lot of ways, right? It can show up in checks in your mail. It can show up as, opportunities to explore your business pursuit. It could show up as sales. And in fact, I was talking to my wife about this course, the Selling with Intention course that I'm working on. And she used the term sales karma. She's like, oh, you're trying to manufacture sales karma. And I'm like, that's exactly right. Right? Like if you show up in gratitude, if you show up in service, if you show up sort of, consistently and positively, like those are the elements that are going to manufacture sales karma. I guess I'm just curious, in your world, how has that, alignment, sales karma, opportunity, anything outside of checks, I guess, from your early days? Like what other sources of alignment have sort of showed up to at least validate like your own hypothesis that this stuff works?
Well, here's how I look at it is money is what a lot of us are seeking, or love or opportunity. To me, it's just the external reflection of what you're putting out into the world. So an analogy to define that or to describe that would be like a power plant generates electricity. The power lines are the conduit of the electricity. The light that comes out of the light bulb is the external result of the power that's generated by the power plant and transferred through the power lines. So you and I, when we create value, when we serve people on the highest level, the conduit could be the sales role. It could be the course. It could be the podcast. The money generated from that, or the opportunity, is the light coming out. So a lot of people are chasing money. The sun doesn't chase light. The sun creates light. Mm. The power plant doesn't go out and seek energy. It creates it. It creates the light. So that's kind of how I view what you're talking about, is the amount of money, the sales, whatever, the external world to me, it's just the result. It's the byproduct of the person I am. So that's why I don't even think about, one thing I tell my clients is I don't need to worry about my paycheck if I'm truly focused on you and your paycheck. So when I do that, I really don't, because all that is it's nothing more than a metric to me. I mean, I can use it to buy things and to create a good quality of life and to pass that on and help other people. But really it's almost just showing what's going on inside of me. And what's inside of me that I need to do to make sure that that's in an abundant supply is just focus on what type of a person I am and what value I bring to the world, how much I can serve other people. When you get into that mindset, it's blissful. I don't need to worry about it anymore. I don't need to stress over, I can't even remember the last time I checked my bank account. I don't even care. Just focus on me because I know it'll be fine. When you have that trust in the world, it's so nice.
Absolutely.
Kind of align with what you're thinking, dude. Is that a good visual?
So it is. I love the metaphor. So we're talking power plant creates the energy, conduit is the power lines, goes out to the lights. The light is the result of that creation, right? And so you go out into the world, as do I. Like I definitely subscribe to that metaphor and to that idea. Create it and the results will come. I guess what I was specifically asking is in that metaphor, if the power plant gets a little extra juice, because the universe sort of recognizes like, oh, you're creating a bunch. Has there been any particularly like recently, right? Have you noticed any sort of droplets of like opportunity or resources or people that have sort of, just landed in your lap to sort of help you along, help you do that creation at scale?
Yeah, this is a crazy story. One of the guys who really has helped me with my personal development his name's Rob Dial. He's has the Mindset Mentor podcast, and he's got 2 million followers on Facebook, 300,000 on Instagram, number one personal development podcast on iTunes. His mentor was Hal Elrod, who wrote The Morning Miracle. He is absolutely driven. His podcast is just going off. And I started, I took a business course from him around coaching. I didn't even plan on coaching. He's kind of the reason why I started coaching. Is I just took his course to be around him because he's just a badass and thinks on a different level than anybody I've ever met. And in that course, the stuff I learned helped me incredibly level up. This is part of that transformation that took my sales role from awesome to absolutely incredible record-breaking levels. And then people were asking what I was doing. So I started coaching other people in the sales organization. And then last year started taking that externally and found my voice, found out how much I love this. But I had been apart from Rob Dial. I still listen to his podcast occasionally, but I'm thinking, I want to teach this stuff. I want to serve and do what he's doing. And there's a ceiling as far as like one-on-one coaching. And then you get into the levels of massively leveraging that via podcasts or group coaching or digital courses, mastermind groups, membership sites. And I just remember I would meditate and think like, how is these guys who are at the top and getting and helping the most people, serving millions of people, how do I get to that level? And in my mind, I kept just thinking like, how do I know what is it he's doing? How do I think like him? What's the gap between where I'm at? Where is he? If he was in my shoes, what would he be doing differently? But I just kept thinking like, I need to know some of this stuff. And a week later, I get a text message from him. He's like, yeah, you got to come down to Austin. I'm doing this mastermind. It's our first live event. We hopped on a call. It was just so crazy and miraculous how that lined up. And then I'm like, okay, this is a signal from the universe. This is what you're talking about, that extra juice, that helping hand. And then went down there and just hit it off with everybody in that mastermind group. And then, he's got a very extensive coaching program where he works with, thousands of other entrepreneurs. And it's just been the opportunities that have just been manifesting are so freakish and so coincidental, yet so, I wouldn't say unexpected, just like, this is true alignment. I know my purpose now. There's so many things that just show up on my doorstep now that are so random, but yet I know that they're there because I'm so aligned. And to me, it just reaffirms what I'm doing. And so now I'm just, how do I get my voice bigger? How do I serve more people? The tools are in place, the right people, the opportunities. I mean, even me being here with you and jamming out on this stuff. It's so fascinating to me. It's so exciting. It's so predictable yet unpredictable. And I feel like a good way to describe manifestation is I can't believe that actually happened, yet I knew it would all along. It's just
That's right.
And that surrender, I think you talked a little bit about that. So now I'm just surrendering myself to the universe. I don't care. I do what I do best, which is just, I'm going to weave this web just like a spider would and trust that things are going to fall into place, the right people, the right opportunities. And they do. This is so cool with me just sitting with you. I think this is very part of the plan, is just sitting here with you. Hopefully there's someone listening to your podcast that I do give a level 10 experience. Even if there's just one person.
Dude, you gave me a level 10 experience. I'm feeling great, man. I'm feeling great. Like, I could definitely, like, just the sureness of some of these concepts and in the mindset and, you know, the abundance and the alignment, like the sureness, the certainty just sort of kind of, you know, bounces off you. It's just like glowing from you. So, you gave me a level 10 experience for what it's worth.
Good. Well, that's my goal. That was my intention. And you are doing amazing things. You are impacting people. There's so many people out there listening to your podcast or getting your newsletter that might not be giving you feedback, but you're delivering a message that they need to hear at that very moment. You, my friend, are that person that shows up in their world exactly when they needed it most.
Hey, it's Bobby. Thanks for listening to today's show. For more, follow Student of Intention at www.studentofintention.com. And remember, don't wait, start small, learn as you go.